The thing beneath Graywater. Ethan Crow had spent most of his life avoiding his hometown. Graywater was the kind of place where the fog felt alive, where the forests whispered after midnight, and where the locals spoke in warnings disguised as folklore. Ethan left at 19 and promised himself he would never come back. But when his older brother Daniel disappeared, leaving nothing but a voicemail filled with static and ragged breathing, Ethan had no choice. "Ethan, don't come here. It's awake again." That was all he had said, and Ethan came anyway. The town hadn't changed, except maybe it had gotten quieter. Houses along the main road sagged under years of neglect. Windows were boarded, doors were chained. The few locals he passed stared at him as if he carried a disease. He found Daniel's house abandoned. The kitchen light was still on. The back door was torn from its hinges. No signs of a struggle, just a strange metallic smell that made Ethan's throat tighten. On the floor were muddy footprints, bare, not human. A trail led into the forest behind the property. Ethan grabbed a flashlight, a pocket knife, and followed. The trees were wrong, twisted, swollen in places, as if something inside them pulsed and pushed from within. Fog slithered between roots like pale veins. The footprint deepened the farther Ethan went, turning from mud to a dark, viscous substance that stuck to the leaves like tar. He found the first carcass half an hour in, a deer, but barely recognizable. Bones bent in impossible angles, organs rearranged like a puzzle someone forced together incorrectly. Flesh dissolved into a gelatinous texture. Ethan gagged. This wasn't an animal attack. Something was molding living creatures like clay. He found the entrance by accident. Daniel's old silver compass lay on the ground near a cracked stone slab. When Ethan touched it, a hiss of air ruptured beneath him, and the slab slid open, revealing a metal staircase descending into darkness. A research facility buried beneath Graywater. As Ethan descended, fluorescent lights flickered on one by one, illuminating rusted walls lined with warning signs. Genetic Division, Project Evolver, Danger, Live Test Subjects, Authorized Personnel Only. Inside the main chamber, he found it, Daniel's journal. The last entry chilled him. It escaped containment. It's changing faster than we predicted. It doesn't just mimic, it integrates, absorbs, rebuilds. If you're reading this, Ethan, do not let it touch you. And whatever you do, don't look at its face. Ethan hardly had time to process the words before a wet, dragging sound crawled through the corridor behind him. At first, he thought it was two creatures. Then he realized it was one, shifting. Its skin rippled like liquid flesh, adjusting shape with each step. Bones pushed through its body and retracted, as if the creature couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Arms split at the elbows into tendrils, then fused back into hands. Worst was the smell, rot mixed with metal. It spoke, not in words, but in voices, Dozens, hundreds, some male, some female, some animalistic, all layered, distorted, as if echoing from inside a deep well. Ethan. His blood froze. Daniel hadn't died. The creature had absorbed him. Ethan ran. The corridors warped with shadows as the creature crawled along floor, ceiling, and walls with equal ease. Its bones cracked and reformed to fit each motion. Ethan slammed doors behind him, but they dissolved under its touch, metal melting like wax. Ventilation shafts became his only escape. He pulled himself inside and crawled until his elbows bled. The creature followed, not through the vent, through the metal. The walls behind him bulged, forming a humanoid hand pressing through the steel. Ethan dropped out the other side before it could reach him. He barricaded himself in a control room and accessed the computers. Old, failing hard drives spun up with agonizing slowness, but he found what he needed. A confession from the original research team. Graywater's water supply had been contaminated decades ago by illegal genetic experiments. The mutation wasn't an accident. It was a weapon. A biological organism designed to adapt to any threat, absorb any creature, and evolve endlessly. But something went wrong. It escaped early. It hid. It grew. It learned to mimic humans. Daniel had come here to shut it down for good. Ethan was now the only one who could finish the job. A siren wailed behind him. The mutant was near. He found the incineration chamber, a massive furnace used to destroy failed experiments. If he could lure the creature inside and activate the system manually, he could end it. The lights flickered as the creature emerged from the shadows, now taller, its skin pale and smooth like unfinished sculpture. Multiple faces formed and dissolved across its torso, some crying, some screaming, some identical to Daniel. "Ethan, help!" Daniel's voice, clear, familiar. It stepped closer, extending an arm that split into branching tendrils. Ethan backed toward the furnace. "Daniel, I'm sorry," he whispered, voice trembling. The creature lunged. He dove aside, slamming the emergency lever. Massive doors sealed shut. The furnace ignited in a roar of white flame. The creature screamed with every voice it had stolen. Anguish, rage, and somewhere Daniel's voice, whispering a final thank you. Minutes later, silence. Ethan emerged from the facility at dawn. The fog over Graywater had thinned. The forest was still again. Birds sang as if nothing monstrous had ever walked beneath those trees. He should have left immediately. He should have burned the journal. He should have warned the world. But when he sat in Daniel's empty kitchen and finally exhaled, something moved in the corner. A shadow, a shape, a face. Daniel's, smiling. His voice whispered from behind Ethan's ear. "It only needs one cell to start again."
Ethan didn't scream. He couldn't. The voice behind him froze every muscle in his body like sudden winter. Daniel's whisper, soft, warm, unmistakably human, should have comforted him. But Ethan knew better. His brother was gone. What was speaking now was a residue, a memory trapped inside something that refused to die. Slowly, Ethan turned. Nothing was there. Just Daniel's old jacket hanging from a chair. Just the soft creak of the kitchen floorboards. Just the faint metallic smell of the creature. Again. Ethan backed toward the door, keeping his eyes on every shadow, every corner, every reflection in the glass. One wrong movement, and the creature, whatever form it took now, could be inches from his skin. He left the house. He didn't look back.
Graywater was waking up. Not with people, with sounds. Hollow thuds beneath the asphalt. Ripples in puddles where nothing touched the water. Faint, warbling echoes in the morning air. By the time Ethan reached the center of town, he understood. Burning the creature hadn't killed it. It had released it. He remembered Daniel's final note. It only needs one cell. One cell had survived the fire. One cell had ridden up the ventilation shafts. One cell had been enough to slip into the pipes, the soil, the air. Ethan checked the time. 5:43 a.m. At 6, the town's water system would flush through its main line. If the organism reached the reservoir, it wouldn't just take Graywater. It would take everything downstream. Hundreds of miles of farmland, rivers feeding into cities, millions of people. He had 17 minutes. Ethan sprinted to Main Street, but froze halfway. A man stood in the road with his back turned, motionless. A mail carrier, gray-blue uniform, mailbag hanging from his shoulder. "Sir," Ethan shouted. "You need to get inside. Right now, something's—" The man turned. His eyes were wrong. Not white, not pupils, not anything human. Just pale, milky membrane stretched over smooth orbs. His jaw unhinged slightly, like a snake. Then he tilted his head too far. Crack, farther, crack. The sound wasn't bone. It was growing, rearranging. Ethan. The voice wasn't Daniel's anymore. It was dozens of people, blended. The creature didn't need to kill to replace someone. It could grow them from scratch. Ethan stepped back. The mail carrier stepped forward, limbs elongating by the second. He ran, because fighting was pointless. The thing wasn't a person. It was a colony wearing skin like clothes.
If he could shut down the old Graywater water tower manually, he could delay the system flush. It wouldn't stop the mutant forever, but it would buy him time to think, time to run, or maybe time to burn the whole town to ashes. The tower loomed above him, rusted steel ribs stretching into a bruised sky. A ladder ran up the side, slick with dew. The ground vibrated beneath his feet. Something massive moved beneath the earth. He began to climb. Halfway up, the metal rattled. He looked down. Something emerged from beneath the street, lifting pavement like cardboard. Human-shaped but wrong. Limbs too many. Voices too loud. More figures appeared behind it. 5, 10, maybe 20, all perfectly still, staring up at him with blank, stretched eyes. They didn't climb. They waited. Because they knew he had no choice but to come down eventually. Ethan reached the valve system at the top. Hands shaking, he pulled the emergency release lever. Nothing happened. The gears were jammed, or worse, grown shut by something organic. The metal pulsed under his touch, warm and sticky. It felt like skin. Ethan recoiled. A low groan vibrated through the tower, followed by something else. A heartbeat. Slow, massive, coming from inside the reservoir. Oh God! There wasn't just contamination in the water. The creature was incubating inside the reservoir. Growing, waiting, and it had minutes before flushing through the entire system. Ethan forced himself to climb onto the hatch. His hands trembled so violently, the metal rang with each touch. He grabbed the wheel lock. It didn't turn. Not because it was stuck, but because something on the other side held it shut. A wet, gurgling breath escaped through the seams. Then a voice spoke, muffled by steel. "Brother." Daniel's voice. Clear, whole, impossible. A hand pressed against the inside of the hatch. A human hand, skin perfect, fingers familiar. Then another hand, and another, and another. Dozens of them. All Daniels. "Let me out!" Ethan stepped back. His legs nearly gave way. This wasn't Daniel returning. This was the mutant wearing him like scripture, replicating his voice, his memories, his face, his soul, into dozens of growing, half-formed copies, all trapped in the tank, all waiting to be released into the world. He had two options. 1. Open the hatch and face what came out. 2. Destroy the tower completely. Ethan closed his eyes. There was really only one choice. He climbed back down, slowly, carefully, as the infected below watched with lifeless patience.
They didn't stop him. They didn't need to, because the creature already believed it had won. Ethan reached the ground, ran to the maintenance shed, and broke the lock. Inside were old fuel containers, a rusted blowtorch, and a box of road flares. Perfect. He doused the tower's base with fuel, choking on the gasoline fumes. The ground trembled again. Pipes beneath him pulsed like arteries. He lit a flare. Red light washed over the street. One of the infected finally moved toward him, jerky steps, head twitching side to side like a broken puppet. "Ethan," the many voices whispered. He threw the flare. The explosion hit him like a giant's fist, knocking him backward as the tower erupted in a column of flame. Metal shrieked. Heat devoured the sky. A deafening roar drowned out the screaming voices echoing from inside the tank. Dozens of Daniel's faces melted in the firelight. Hundreds of limbs thrashed. A single colossal silhouette formed inside the burning structure, then collapsed. Graywater shook as the tower fell, flames engulfing the street. When Ethan opened his eyes, everything was silent. He had done it. He had stopped the flush. He had destroyed the incubating mass. But as he staggered to his feet, coughing, dizzy, barely conscious, he heard something behind him. A voice, not Daniel's, not human. A voice deeper, calmer, more evolved. "All you've done is accelerate me." Ethan turned, and in the fire-lit smoke, something new stepped out. Bigger, smoother, perfectly symmetrical, human-shaped, almost beautiful, except for its eyes. Its eyes were empty, yet they stared with absolute intelligence. "You burned the chrysalis, Ethan, but I am the result." It smiled with flawless lips. "And now I am ready."